football in grade school through high school, ran track. I played volleyball for 15, 20 years. I coached volleyball, youth volleyball and youth football for a while. So sports are always been an angle of my life. Out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps, so kind of went a different path. Was enrolled to play D3 football, but had a different calling back in '05. So went that route, joined the Marine Corps, was in the Marines until 2011. Spent some time in Central Africa, Iraq, did a tour in Iraq in 2008. Got out in 2011. And after that, kind of worked some odds and ends, a lot of grounds and maintenance, a lot of physical labor um, before going back to school, doing some office work. And spent a few years in the entrepreneurial, kind of like you guys, trying to start my own businesses. Started an agricultural business. Decided it wasn't quite for me. Good idea, but not the right industry for me. So then I went and focused on the fitness industry. And got my personal trainer's license, um, group fitness instructor. Started a gym. So that took about 3 years of my life on that, and recently, unfortunately, had to close the gym for business reasons. But
Hmm.
the whole fitness world is still real important to me. So I kind of look back, inward a little bit rather than the outward helping the public with the gym and stuff like that. So looking more inward on my own struggles, on the physical, the mental health challenges that I face, that I see a lot of people face. And actually got back into obstacle course racing this past year. I ran, I think, 8 or 9 events. Got one last one next week to finish off the season, but that's been a huge focus. So I got a lot of stuff in the works with a group of people for next year, kind
Hmm.
of forming a team focused on bringing mental health awareness to people. So that's going to be kind of our team theme, and a little exposure that way as we run these things. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's good stuff. I mean, I think a lot of what having I know Dylan can attest to this as well, but a lot of what we do now starts when we're young, right? And I think that sports plays into a lot of that. Obviously, you being in the Marine Corps, like there's obviously an athleticism piece to that, and in terms of whether you're talking about camaraderie or just your skill sets and how you can actually portray that right in your personality. So talk to us a little bit about your childhood in sports and really how that ultimately transitioned into the Marine Corps and how it helped you, right? Because I think, a lot of the people that we have on this podcast, they're former athletes or current athletes, and they talk very respectfully of what sports and athletics can do for you. So, talk a little bit about that and ultimately how that's really helped you kind of on the mental health side, because I know that OCR racing, right? There's got to be a mental health side of that in terms of and how it's helping you, right? And cope with obviously your current struggles that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I guess, I never really looked at it that way from childhood on until I had a son. So my son he's 16 now, he's a junior in high school. Um, he's played football. I coached him in first grade, so he's been playing football for, 10, 11 years now. His team made it to the state championship last year. And they're making another good run this year. So it wasn't really until I started watching back in that time frame, being a kid playing sports and watching how really your world is, that's it. I mean, I look made me look back, and I look back at high school, and I know it's cliche, but I miss it. I'd give 10 years off my life just to put pads on again. um, and so watching him kind of grow through it from the outside, it really helped me see how that actually did transition through my life. I mean, I would have talks with him about how, his each game is its own battle, and that's your battlefield for, Friday night or Saturday morning, whatever it may be when you're playing. But you're stepping foot on there, and it's a whole new world. And that kind of transitioned, into obviously me being in actual battlefields. But looking back, it's got a lot of the same elements. You're relying on those around you. Your football team, those 11 guys at the snap of the ball, they live and die with you. So you really have to form that bond. You have to form that teamwork off the field. 10 times as much as your physical ability on the field. I mean, having talent is great, but one guy with talent isn't gonna do much. So seeing him form his friendships and looking back at my friendships and things like that, and then like I said, as I carried into the Marines and really learned, the blood, sweat, and tears of sharing that with another group of people, really helps. It really correlates,
Mhm.
all through life, and that's kind of where I'm at now. Like I just said, forming my team to run these races with, and seeing the people that run these races of all athletic abilities, but they're all there supporting each other. They're all there picking each other up, helping each other over obstacles, forming that teamwork. That's
Mhm.
just so important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you make a good point too. Like, it's one thing to have skill and be a skilled player, but it's another thing to be a good teammate. And what do you bring to the table, right? Like, what are you bringing to the team? I mean, Dylan and myself, like, we see it on a daily basis being college hockey players. Like, we've seen it our whole life where there are guys who are super skilled, but they might be not so great teammates and they're getting shipped off, right? Like, they're not going to hang around because they're a cancer to the team, right? And I think that you yourself too, especially, being in the Marines. First of all, like I can't speak on being in the military or anything like that, but I have massive respect for everybody, men and women who fight for our country because I think that that is the only reason why I can do what I do. That's the only reason why Dylan can do what he does. And ultimately, like, why you can continue to do what you do today with OCR racing and, have a family and all those sorts of things. So, I guess if you can talk a little bit on the teamwork side of things and the camaraderie, because I think there's a lot of value in that, and a lot of people, like you said, right, like looking back on when you're younger playing sports, like you don't really realize it, but it's really teaching you a life lesson, and a lot of it resorts back to the teamwork aspect of it, and what you can really learn, and whether it's you're talking about leadership or just the tiny things, right, like showing up first, leaving last, giving it your best effort, and all those sorts of things because it really does go a long way in the team aspect.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, when you look at teamwork, it's not, you got a wide group of people, wide group of abilities, and like you said, I played with people who were so talented, but they didn't like a coach or they didn't like their play time, and so they just give up. And so that that's like you said, I'd rather have 11 guys with a little bit lower ability that are working together rather than having a handful of these super talented, ego driven players. So you got these teams, and everybody brings something different. So, like if I break down the small group that I ran obstacle races with this year, I had run long distance a lot in my life, so I might have a little bit more of the endurance to cardio. One guy in the group is just a freak on the monkey bars. I mean, he can hang from anything, swing from anything, and then there's times, that I get frustrated. Maybe I'm a little hot headed too. I fail on an obstacle, don't quite have the abilities I had in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always somebody there to pick me up that has the motivation that I lack at that moment. And you kind of feed off of that and you keep each other going, and reaching into all your different abilities, giving little pointers from a physical aspect or, just cheering people on, from failure and from success, so really kind of bringing all the different abilities, physical and mental, into a team to form that solid group is awesome to see.
I think too some of the best teams that I've been a part of and enjoy as well. We've played through Bantam midget juniors and now into college hockey. Like you find the best teams have components that all build on each other and they can feed off each other. Like you said, there's someone there to pick you up. Um, I guess for me specifically, one year in juniors, our most successful team wasn't the most skilled. It was the team that performed the best as a group because we all built on each other. We all had pieces that could contribute in different ways, and um, you know, there's so many things you can take away from team sports and being a part of a team into whatever it is, the workforce, entrepreneurial path, anything like that. There's so many different things that you can take away from the lessons you learn being a part of a successful team that really works together.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean it. I when I was coaching, first to fourth grade players, and then on, a little more later, later on in their youth, that does it transfers so much into life. Sports, you only play sports for so long. I mean, I haven't played an organized sport. I think the last time I played maybe when I was 35. I'm 38 now, so it's been a couple years. But I hope I have a whole lot more years of not playing sports than I did. And but that that carries on, whether it's in the job force, having having that self respect, having that respect for others that you gain through sports, whether you're respecting the officials, even if you don't agree with them, respecting your coaches, even though sometimes you might butt heads, but still maintaining that that discipline, that respect throughout life as you go. You come and get your first job. You're not going to agree with all your coworkers. You're not going to get along with every boss you ever had. But being able to be a team player, knowing that you have to contribute something, I think that comes like you said, starts real early. If
Mm.
you're in first grade and you don't want to share your toys, well, that's probably got to be addressed. Because you're not always going to get your way like you think you do when you're in first grade.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is something to say about that too, in terms of, I've seen both sides of it. I'm a very like observant person, so I like to look at people in terms of what do they bring to the table, right? Like what are the key aspects of their life that they're really bringing? Like for me personally, like I've always looked at myself from the outside in terms of, okay, what traits do I have that my teammates can really feed on and help them, right? And bring back to the team. And for me, it's always been work ethic. It's always been going the extra mile, right? Like showing that there's more, like there's more potential. There's no ceiling, right? And I think that a lot of people, they limit themselves in certain ways, but the people that do kind of blow through that cap and try to reach to that next level, uh, ultimately they realize that like there are no limits, and you can do anything you really want to. And I think that this brand overall was built on that basis. And all of us on right now have kind of been in this situation of, you never really know. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, is like you never really know when you're going to face an obstacle, or you're going to face a failure, or vice versa, right? Like you could wake up the next day and there could be a massive opportunity that presents itself that propels the business to the next level. And Dylan and I, we talk about it all the time of like being in a startup, you never really know when that next obstacle is going to come. There's times where you're cruising along, things are going well, but like there's something over the shoulder that you're like, there's going to be some problems that ultimately arise. There's going to be conflicts. There's going to be adversities, and ultimately, it's like, what are you doing on a daily basis to build yourself up to the person that can be resilient and be able to face those obstacles? So I guess in terms of your own life, like how have you been able to, because obviously you've seen just about everything, right? Like and I think a lot of people can say the same thing in terms of their route, right? Like people learn the same skill sets taking different avenues. So for yourself, like in terms of facing the mental challenges, because I think that the mental hurdles that we face in life can be built up by doing physical things, right? Whether it's training, whether it's sports and athletics. Like how has that really allowed for you to push to the next level and be resilient and face those inevitable obstacles and adversities that we face in life?
Yeah, I tried to preach that whether I was coaching, whether I was training, whether I was in the service playing sports. I always tried to really get people to focus on the mental and physical as one. You can't build one without the other, and really strengthening that mind can you can reach new heights that you never thought imaginable. I look back when I got out of the service in 2011. It's kind of 2011, 2014 was a big struggle time for me. So I was real lost, very unmotivated, very unhealthy, and it took. My son was about 4 or 5 then in 2013, and he kind of was questioning, well, why do you do this? Why do you do that? And why don't you do this? And having that innocence, come out kind of helped me look inside and say, what, why am I not? Why am I, being unhealthy? Why am I not pushing myself? So I started running again, and it had been years since I'd done anything physical, and I was running half a mile to a mile at a time, and I was dying. And I had to pick myself up every day and try to get out the door just to get that 1 mile, maybe two, until I ran, a 5K. And I was like, awesome, that was pretty cool. My goal was to run a 10K. So after about a year, I signed up, got myself to actually show up for this event and run a 10K. Um, and then it was I had gotten myself into the mindset of why stop here. So I'll skip a few years, but I worked up to running in the Marine Corps Marathon in 2018. So from
Mhm.
2013 to 2018, I went from running a half a mile to completing a marathon in just over 4 hours. So not a bad time, about a 9 minute mile pace. Which I look back and my first mile that I was running was 10, 12 minutes. So here I'm running 26 consecutive miles faster than I ran 1 mile. And it's to this day I don't it's hard for me to comprehend that. Like it's like holy shit, you actually did that. You know,
Yeah.
you when I started, there's somebody would have said, "Hey, someday you could run a marathon." I would have laughed at them. I'm like, nope, my body's too beat up. I don't, obviously didn't have the mental strength that I needed, but a few years of work and I did that. So
Mhm.
then transitioning from running due to some respiratory issues that I deal with, I had to find my way to the gym and set new goals. And so there again, I was like, well, what do I do? I know how to run. So I haven't lifted weights since 20 years since I was in high school. Um, and so I was like, where do I begin? And all of a sudden, I was hitting these marks, never even having done a clean and jerk in my life. And all of a sudden, I'm putting up 245, 255 on these lifts that I was like, wow, I didn't even think I could pick this thing up. So just getting yourself to set your goals and setting goals far in advance and setting high goals and not meeting them right away is a good thing. I mean, if you meet your goal every day, well, where do you go? So you have to kind of build in the ability to get over the failure. I couldn't run a marathon that first day, but one day I did because of the work I put in, and you have to keep yourself going. You have to have the discipline with yourself, and you have to believe in yourself. And you have to have the people around you that believe in you to help you with that as well. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, and there is something to say about that. Like, it's like the old cliche, like people overestimate what they can achieve in a year, but they underestimate what they can achieve in 5 years or
mhm.
10 years. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it really is about the journey. I mean, we talk about this all the time. It's a common theme with people that we have on the podcast, and even just in conversation with Dylan and myself, is like it's so easy to get ahead of yourself of like, why isn't my goal coming quicker? Why can I achieve this much faster? But if you really take a look, and it's something that we talk about a lot of all the stories and the memories that we have, the best memories of experiences or just like funny things that happen were in the shitty times. Like the times where like
Yep.
you're just like you're struggling. It feels like a struggle at the moment, but you learn so much from it. And two, it's like those were building blocks to get you to where you are today. And I think it's so easy to fall into the trap of like, why me? Like, why is this happening right now? Why isn't it, why aren't I a few steps ahead? Why aren't I a few years ahead in this process? And it, I think that's where, a lot of plays into it, whether you talk about social media or all the, the fame and glamour that people, put out there today. But if you really look internally, it's like, wow, I really am like learning a lot in the process. And I myself, right? Like when I look at, my running journey that I've had, and I've run in a couple like ultra marathons and all these sorts of things, but it never started at that. Like it's like, okay, I'm gonna run, 3 miles a day and see how that goes. And then it's like, okay, well, that next segment I'm gonna do 5 miles a day. And then before you know it, like you're building up to like 10 miles a day and you start to get in this groove. And then when you look back, you're like, how is that even possible? Like, how do you do that? And it's really just a compound. Like, it compounds every single day. And I think it really resorts back to discipline. Like, if people can get in the groove of things and set your schedule. Like, I'm going to show up on this day. I'm going to run X amount of miles, or I'm going to get this workout in. Like, you start to fall into problems when you don't stick to that routine and you skip that workout or you skip that run or you don't do the 3 miles, you maybe do a half mile or whatever it is. So I think that you know and it really depends on the person. Like I can't speak for everybody, but I do think that the discipline side of things, and I know that we can all agree on that, it's huge in terms of making it to that next day and really just getting like 1% better every day.
Yeah, I mean that's my a personal motto of mine that I've had for years has always been strive for greatness, right? So greatness can change. Greatness can be a daily goal. Greatness can be a year goal, 10-year goal. It could be something that you never quite get to. But as long as you're striving for it, you're not satisfied. Never be satisfied with where you're at. Be happy with what you've achieved, But an old TV show I used to watch, the guy's saying was always satisfaction is the death of desire. So once you're
Mm-hmm.
satisfied, like where do you go from there? He kind of kills
Mm-hmm.
that, kills your vibe. So striving for greatness was always where I tried to model myself. Maybe like you said, it's rainy. You don't want to run that day. It's cold, but you do. That day's greatness, you achieved it. Maybe
Mhm.
you were slower than usual. Maybe you didn't go as far, but you were striving for it, and you knew that that day was going to contribute to that bigger goal down the line, and you always got to be working for that. And that's kind of what I try to tell my son. I mean, like I said, I'm 38 and I'm still trying to set myself goals, things I want to reach, things I want to achieve in all aspects of life. It doesn't just have to be sports oriented, but you always have to set those goals, always have to be working towards something. Because once you stop and you get complacent, then it's hard to keep going, because that can creep in real fast, and it can be the why me, I don't want to do this is too hard. And again, that goes back into the team aspect, having that team to pick
Mm-hmm.
you up and having that team to lean on. I don't want to go out and run today because it's cold. Well, my buddies are there waiting for me, so I gotta. There is no staying home that day. You got to do it because people
Mm-hmm.
are relying on you and they get you out. And then misery loves company, so you all afterwards be like, yeah, that sucked. It was cold, hated it,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
did it. So that's, I mean, that goes. I had that in the military. To this day, if I meet up with guys that I was in Iraq with, 17 years ago now, there's times that we'll sit and we'll laugh about certain things, remember just how bad it sucked. And that's
Yeah.
usually, we usually talk about that more than anything else. So it's achieving those things through whatever elements you happen to come across.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that team keeps you accountable too. Like you said, you can't leave, they're there waiting for you. You can't leave them hanging. Like you have that obligation to show up for your teammates. And I think that ties into like the power of one more, or I'm sure you're familiar with Nick Bear, like his saying, go one more. It's like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be able to run 10 miles every day this month, but I know I'm going to do it tomorrow. And then, you accomplish that, you hit it, and it's like, okay, well, now I have 29 more days, but I know I'm going to be able to do it tomorrow. And you keep building on that and building, and that turns into discipline and consistency. And I just feel there's so many, like, it's intertwined and related, and the ability just to break it down step by step, it ties into your ability to be consistent and build discipline, and that results in ultimately your goals, whatever you're trying to achieve. You're striving for greatness, like you said. There's so many little ways to break it down in order to reach your end goal, which may be a massive goal, but it's easy. It's much easier to break it down step by step, realize what you need to do on a daily basis in order to get to your end point.
Yeah, definitely. And that self accountability, that team accountability to reach that is just huge.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because I think the compounding goes both ways too. Like you can have the discipline every single day and build up, but it also goes the other way too. Like if you're creating bad habits, like that can be a quick downhill slide. Which I've been there. Like I've been there in my life where like I feel like I reach a certain point and you can kind of set it on cruise control, and it's not the case. Like if you're not reaching for it every single day and you're not setting new goals, and it is cliche, but like shoot for the stars. Like you want big goals, and then you work backwards, and like how are you going to get there? Like what are the steps you're going to take to get there? Yeah, it's very true. But I think in today's day and age too, there's a lot of different struggles that I think everybody's facing in some way, shape, or form. Whether to a certain degree. I mean, I think obviously it varies in terms of how severe it is. But the big topic nowadays is like mental health, right? And I think that it varies in a lot of different ways. And I know that you're kind of working with some stuff with OCR and having a teammate and really building up this kind of facing the struggle of mental health, which I think that everybody faces in some way, shape, or form, obviously to certain levels. But in your life, what are some sort of things that you've used to really cope with that and ultimately turn a negative into a positive? Because I know everybody deals with it in different ways, but I know for a fact that people that listen to this can absolutely take away from something like that. And even myself, like personally, because I love hearing how other people deal with stuff like that, because there's no hiding it, right? I think everybody knows that people are dealing with certain stuff, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? Like every day, it's not like you wake up and it's like today's a great day. Like some days you're gonna wake up, you're gonna feel like shit, or stuff's going down the tubes, and it feels like it's like domino effect of one thing after another that's leading to this massive obstacle that you're facing. And I think it's easy to get caught up in that, but it's also just as easy to realize that you have control over that, and really find a way to turn a negative into a positive, like I said.
Yeah, and I mean that's the scary thing with mental health is there's so many aspects of it.
Hmm.
I mean, you can, depression, anxiety, anger, whatever it may be, and it comes in waves and you don't know how to deal with it. I mean, having tearing your ACL is a huge injury, but you have doctors that are telling you everything you have to do. Here's your surgery, how we're going to fix it. Here's the medications you got to take. Here's the rehab you got to do. And if you're strong enough mentally, you work through that and you're back on the field. But when it
Hmm.
comes to mental health, there's no real, you can't really defeat it. You can't get rid of it. And so you have to find those weapons to battle against it. Again, back on the battlefield, whether, sitting right here in this chair, there's times that I battle, internal things. So finding those weapons, and that's where I try to bring people into the fitness world because, the fitness world, like I said, starting running, it really helped me. There were times, if I was feeling angry and I ran, well, guess what? After running full out for a while, that anger kind of dissipates when you wear yourself down. Plus, then you feel, okay, well, at least I accomplished something, and that's kind of one of my biggest struggles is, I know I could go outside right now and run 5-10 miles because I know that my body is capable of it. But getting myself to do it, that's the biggest challenge. Getting up and then you watch the day go by. A lot of people that battle mental health will do that. They'll watch so much time go by because they literally are debilitated. They can't get themselves up to do it, and that's where getting people together is such a strong element of that. And doing physical activities, whether it's going for a walk, going for a run, lifting weights, finding what you can do and bettering yourself really helps your mental health way more than any therapy or pharmaceuticals or however society says we're supposed to deal with things, which I am completely against. And that's one of the biggest pieces of awareness I'm trying to bring from somebody who's been on for the last 15 years. I've been on every medication known to man, and there's nothing that helps me more than a good workout, really. So, and the eating healthy, that's another one. Tying nutrition into it, making sure you're getting the right things in your body, because you poison yourself with added sugars and MSG and all that garbage that gets poured into things, and that weighs you down, and that sets you back so far. So really finding the weapons against your struggles is really what I want to focus on, and that's one of our themes for our OCR team next year is each person's going to represent a mental illness, whether it's anxiety, it's PTSD, depression, suicide awareness, drug addiction. There's just so many. So we're gonna really try to focus on that, so that that nobody feels like everybody's battle is unique, but you're never fighting alone.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, and I think the supporting cast that you have, it really is everything. And I feel bad for people that don't have that. It really it does hit home, because I have had that my whole life. Like I have a supportive family, I have supportive friends, and that goes so far. Like when you're down in the dumps or whatever it might be, and you have people there like picking you back up, and in our case too, like more specifically in a team environment, right? Like if you have a guy that's always there when you're down, you have a bad game, you have a bad shift in hockey or whatever it might be, and he's there to pick you back up, like that gives you hope. And hope is such a huge piece in succeeding in life, and even on a smaller scale of just getting through the day to day in a positive light. I think it goes so far, and I think it's really cool. I've been following along on your Instagram and everything like that with all the OCRs and everything like that. I've never done an OCR myself, besides like doing the DecaFit. I did the ruck down at, where was that, Dylan? Was that or
In Florida. And well, then
Florida.
you did it in Dallas
In
too, but your
Dallas,
first one was in Florida, yeah.
yeah, yeah, which was super cool. That was the first time I've done any sort of like obstacle like racing stuff. I know it's not like actual obstacles, but in terms of just an event like that, so that it's really cool. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and just your experiences and really how you got into it too? Because I know that with the gym and everything like that, you guys were involved in the DECA space, but I'd love to hear how you personally got more involved into that space.
Yeah, so DECA was awesome. What Spartan put together with DECA really bringing the two worlds, the fitness in the gym world into kind of the OCR. Because I mean, if you look at it, obstacle course racing, you look at the start when Spartan came out, it's the mud, it's the barbed wire, it's pretty brutal, and that's not for everybody. There's probably only 10 to 15% of active people actually participate in obstacle course races.
Mhm.
So what Spartan did with DECA and their competitions was awesome. I held a couple DECA events at my gym, and they're so. I mean, I had 14-year-olds and I had 70-year-olds running these things. It was awesome.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they really brought that to light to so many more people. But me personally, I love the outdoors. I love monkey bars, the big rigs, the water, and all the elements. Really being out in nature and battling the elements like that. I don't know if it's a primitive thing or whatever it may be. I love, but if there's I come out beaten and bloody, but I cross that finish line. That's to me, I like that. I'll paint my face, um, you know, for battle every time I run an obstacle. Most of the time, I run an obstacle course race.
Yeah.
When I was just down in West Virginia this year, and I completed my first Spartan trifecta. So it was the first that had been a goal for mine
Mm.
for probably 8 9 years to actually do. A Spartan trifecta, hit their beast, their super, and their sprint in one weekend. So total it turned out being 26 miles, something like 6,000 feet of elevation because it was in the Appalachian Mountains. It was nasty. It was brutal. It was one of the most challenging things I've ever did mentally and physically, but completed it. So that was just a huge accomplishment. And I had run my first Spartan back in 2016. So I ran their sprint, was held here in Wisconsin, and then they had one of their stadium series at Lambeau Field. So I was like, well, that
Mhm.
sounds pretty cool. Let's give that a try, not knowing anything about this, and that's kind of what it taught me. Okay, you gotta work on your grip strength. You got to work on your core strength. It's not just sure you got the endurance to run a 10K, a half marathon, but those things, obstacle course racing, just kind of brings all those elements together, and you gotta kind of battle it out,
Yeah.
with nature itself. So that's what drew me personally to it.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, those have I've always wanted to do. I'm gonna have to do it once hockey's all said and done. I'm definitely gonna get more into that, especially the outdoor stuff. I'm the same way. I love the outdoor stuff, hiking. Like I'm a huge fan of going on long hikes and stuff like that. In New Hampshire, I mean that's the closest mountain ranges to me. But I've always loved, even if it's by yourself, like just getting out there in nature. There's something about it. You come back, you feel refreshed.
Hmm.
You feel like a new person almost every time.
Yeah, that's my personal fitness right now. A friend of mine helped me really get in touch with nature. It's called Sturker, so it's Norse. Sturker
Mhm.
is it's actually a big push right now. You can look it up. They got Sturker Strength, but it's stones, lifting stones, unknown weights, stuff like
Mhm.
that. So unearthing rocks, and putting them over my head. That's kind of one of my daily routines. That really brings me joy. But getting my hands in the dirt, that way, kind of going back again, maybe more of a primitive approach to
Yeah.
fitness, but getting away from all the high priced equipment and all that. And I built a pull up rig. I got old tractor tires. I got logs. I got stones, and I get a pretty good workout with it. So I loved the earth aspect of it.
That's freaking
That's
awesome.
awesome.
I love that.
So, hey, that's all it takes. Sometimes those are the best lifts, in the old basement, whatever it is, old basement lifts out at the cabin. I know those are some of my favorite where, it's the old swing set is a pull-up bar and same thing. You got tires and very minimalistic equipment and you make it work and those are some of my favorite times and favorite workouts. You can just kind of get after it. But no, that's awesome. The obstacle course racing is like so fun too. We had one. growing up, totally separate from Spartan. It was just called Mud Run, but it was a 5K with all sorts of different obstacles, and you're covered in mud by the end of it. But those are awesome. They're a great time. Like I think everyone should give it a go at least one point in their life. It's a great time.
Yeah, and it's really become a really cool culture too. So
Hmm.
running distance running is to me it's very individual. It's people are there to do their run. They don't want to talk. They're not helping each other. They're achieving great goals, which I love. Which I'll still do some running events here and there, but it's a really closed off kind of persona for distance
Yeah.
runners. They're a whole different breed. But the obstacle course world, it doesn't matter if you're out there running, you run this 5K course in 20 minutes or it takes you an hour and a half. These people are enjoying it together and they really stop. They pick each other up. At the finish line, people are waiting. People are going back to help people with obstacles.
Hmm.
So really, that's another thing. Once I did it, having done long distance running, and then this obstacle course racing is really why I focus on that mainly now because of the culture that it brings, and all the people are just fantastic.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. That's good stuff. So what are your like when you look ahead, the next 3, 5 years within that range, and this could cover many aspects, whether you're talking about, business, if you're getting into something else, or fitness. What are your main goals that you're looking at right now that you really want to tackle over the next few years?
Oh, well, that takes me into my 40s, so that's a scary one to look at. The next couple years, like I said, I really want to nail down more exposure of
Mhm.
the mental health during these events. Maybe even branch out into partnerships, setting up a booth, things like that, and staying around the events that way. Getting some logos on our shirts, getting a team shirt, trying to build that up. So we're gonna get together. Me and my group are gonna get together probably the next month and kind of map out. There's an obstacle weekend in Ohio called War X
Mhm.
next year in June, which is it looks pretty intense. It looks great. I mean, you can fire a flamethrower, you go down a 300-foot slide into a pond. It's crazy. So you camp for the whole weekend and you do all this like it's almost militaristic, mission
Yeah.
oriented. So we're gonna hit that. Spartan's trifecta is coming back to the Midwest. So hopefully that's close to me here up by Milwaukee, whether it's Chicago, maybe Indiana, somewhere in there. So I'd like to get another trifecta. Um, there's another big medal you get if you run three trifectas. So I gotta try for that. So if I do one next year, then maybe when I'm 40, I'll do my third trifecta, and
Oh yeah.
that'll really see how the body's doing by then. I
Yeah.
got a lot of physical ailments that I'm battling that are going to catch up with me sooner or later. So it's kind of racing against the clock to see how much of the physical aspect I can get in.
Mhm.
So I can't really look that far ahead that way. But like I said, looking more internal right now,
Mhm.
um, and then try to bring some awareness next year.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, hey, I mean, anything that we can do to help too, whether it's in terms of sponsorships or you got some ideas that you want to talk about in terms of any way that we can help, whether it's social media or, helping out in, with our newsletter or, we got a lot of people that we're connected with too. So, if you have any ideas, we want to help out any way that we can. So, be sure don't hesitate to reach out. And always love to catch up and chat as well.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I mean, even just throwing the underdog logo on our shirts. I mean, you
Yeah.
see, I have my underdog in my hand before every race. Uh,
That's freaking awesome. I
I
love
think the trifecta weekend I had probably 6 or 7 of them.
that.
We drove. Me and my wife drove to West Virginia from here, so it took us about 11 hours to drive there. And my son had a football game Friday night, and it was his first game of the year. Well, I was like, well, I can't miss this first game. So we
Yeah.
we stayed until 9:30, and then drove. And my beast race, which was 14 and a half miles, was at 8 a.m.
Oh.
We drove overnight. She drove so that I could kind of doze on and off. But I cracked my first underdog at probably 5 in the morning to get myself ready. Had another one before we started. Had to have another one after. Oh man, it carried me through on that one. So
That's awesome. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. So we always close out our episodes with one, or I open up to a few pieces of advice that I think I want to change this question a little bit. Give piece of advice to your younger self that you would need. When whether you're talking about getting through sports or getting into the Marine Corps or getting into the entrepreneurial side of things, something that you think you would have been very valuable to yourself as you're growing as a person.
First of all, I'd say, take care of yourself. Really understand what you're putting in your body. I look at when I was younger, growing up in the 90s, there was not a lot of nutritional elements. I look at when I was in Iraq in the early 2000s, the energy drinks we had were the original Red Bull and then Rip It. Um, and nothing, nothing against those companies, but they didn't have the best ingredients. They got me through a lot of long mission, 40, 50-hour missions. So they did their job, but really understand what you're putting in your body. And that's what drew me to you guys was the energy blends that you guys put together, the transparency with your ingredients, uh, you know, energy drink aside, what's actually in it, what you're putting in your body. So really paying attention to that and taking care of yourself. And then I would say, push yourself harder. I look back and my younger self was maybe more reserved than I would have liked. I held myself back. I think I had a lot more potential. Um, and really, you're your own roadblock if you let it. So really break through that barrier and take the leap and trust yourself. Just believe in yourself. I tell my son before every football game to play fearless. Don't play reckless, don't play angry, but play fearless. Don't be afraid. Trust yourself. Always be moving, and just go after it.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great advice, honestly, because I think that especially on the sports side of things too, that's where a lot of people run into performance issues is when they're going in and they're timid, they're not confident in themselves, but that really does carry over into a lot of different aspects of life. But Dylan, any other final questions, or Jason, any closing thoughts that you got?
No, that was great, Jason. Thanks again for coming on. I think there's a lot that Joey and myself can take away, but our listeners as well. A lot of great wisdom and just experience that what you've been through. I think there's a lot that they can take away from it. So it was great to have you on.
Yeah, it was great talking to you guys. I really appreciate it. I love what you guys are doing. I love following the company. I've been, I had, first talked to you guys probably about a year ago, and
Hmm.
I love seeing what you guys are doing, getting into stores, getting out there. So always wishing you guys luck. Always be following around, and yeah, we'll touch base here, over the winter before we get into obstacle racing season next year, and maybe we can put something together.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Sounds like a plan.
All right, love it.
All right, Jason. Well, we'll talk soon. Thanks again for coming on, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Anytime, guys. Take care.